Welcome, everyone. You are now live.
Hello.
Thanks, Lauren. Should we maybe wait like 1 or 2 minutes for a few more people to join and then start?
Okay, we'll just follow your lead.
Perfect.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this conversation on the RMB TAF Alumni Insights. I'm Aysha Waja, the current fair manager for RMB Turbine Art Fair. And I have a history with the fair because I've worked on the fair for the first 2 years of the fair and then came back last year just because it's such a great fair. So I think it's fitting that I facilitate this conversation. Just a bit of background on this conversation and then also the alumni program that we have started. Turbine Art Fair has, since its inception, maintained its core mission as providing a space for emerging artists, emerging and smaller galleries, as well as art platforms, and then young and new collectors to meet and engage and connect with each other. And this program, the alumni program, is aimed at acknowledging and celebrating the TAF family, which includes our artists, all of our exhibitors, as well as our audience members, and then celebrating the achievements of our exhibitors and the artists over the last 8 years. So the alumni program, which is kicking off with this conversation, but will also will link up to our memberships program, which will be launched in the coming weeks. So please keep an eye out for that, as we'll have other conversations and events and programs between the alumni and the memberships that people can participate in. Today we're speaking to Anastasia Pather, Kamogelo Masemo and Mashilo, who are artists primarily, but then Kamogelo is also an exhibitor at the fair and co-founder of Black in Contemporaries. And the reason why we're speaking to them is because for me, they each represent key moments in the fair's history and its development. So Anna, I'm just going to very briefly explain, exhibited in the first Turbine Art Fair in 2013 as an independent artist. She had her own little booth with her works, which was really, really cool and fantastic. Mash, who exhibited in 2014 with the then Fresh Produce and now what is now known as the RMB Talent Unlocked program. But he was also the first recipient of the TAF Art Prize with the Zult Residency and Zult Foundation, I think. And then Kamogelo as an artist, but also as the co-founder of Black in Contemporaries, which is an artist collective and platform from Ekurhuleni. So I want to start with each of you by reflecting on the first TAF that you exhibited in and what that process and that experience was. I mean, I also just want to, I'll share my screen quickly just to show an image of a very bad image that I have from the first fair, the first ever Turbine Art Fair, and kind of how exciting, I mean, this was a very exciting moment for me to see all the stands up, and this was at Turbine Hall in the glass house as we were waiting for the exhibitors to arrive. And obviously it's extremely different this year because we're all online and we don't have this kind of excitement. So maybe if we start with Anna, because you showed in the first fair, maybe you can reflect on that experience and on that fair and what that was for you.
I should start by saying hi to everyone and thank you so much for having me and remembering me. It feels like a lifetime ago since those moments. You know, it was the first Turbine, but it was also really the first art moment that I had after leaving Wits Art School. I had packed all my works and not really sure of what my achievements were going to be that weekend, or even what I had hoped to do. I was working out of a space that I had rented in 44 Stanley, and saw this opportunity as a way to sort of introduce myself in a more formalized manner. And I was downstairs in the basement, flanked by Bev Butko and Candice Karma, who, you know, have gone on also to have very illustrious careers. And we were very confused as to what was going to happen, because we were walking downstairs, and I think another bank had some type of building blocks performance going on as a riot, whilst we were trying to hang our works. So it had this bizarre South African feel to it at the beginning. But also, you know, I reflect on it now as a way that it was the first way that I connected with a network that I still go back to now, and who have still remained interested in my work. And it was extremely scary, because I never sold the work that weekend, and I, you know, had financed all of this out of my own pocket, and I felt really deflated by it. But the next 2 weeks, I then sold everything that I had shown on the fair. So I think in the same way I was getting used to the ideas of a fair and a commercial space, I think some of the visitors were also feeling the same way. And that to have that sort of touch point and reflect with everyone and also grow with each other became this very interesting space for me.
Mash, what was your first experience? You showed with what was then Fresh Produce, I think in 2014.
Yeah, so on my side, I think just to reiterate what Anna's saying, I mean, it was also quite scary, because I just relocated from Pretoria to Johannesburg to sort of establish myself, because at the time, I just felt like the Pretoria scene wasn't as vibrant as Johannesburg, and I think I'm eternally grateful to the collective that I met in Johannesburg, which was Alphabet Zoo, and that introduced me to the Assemblage Studios, where I did the R&B mentorship, and that's how I ended up being on the exhibition on the fair. And geez, I mean, you know, after winning the award and everything, you know, it was just like chaotic. I mean, I don't think I remember anything from that week. Just thinking of all the chaos and the attention, and you know, but I think it's safe to say it really launched my career. Yeah.
You know, if I can add, I remember so clearly this moment where Mash had set up all his works, and he had this sort of pile of these, like, now pretty iconic to your body of work, with these black mealies in a very sort of deliberate pose. And this little girl walked up, sat down cross-legged on top of all his work, and then just started rearranging everything. And I could just see, like, fair organizers scrambling to try and get to her. And then Mash just sat back, and he was like, no, this is the moment. This is the art moment right here. Like, we're going to let this happen.
Yeah, those videos, I mean, it's quite an iconic image. I actually have one that I took just after we announced.
Took on board, Aisha.
I mean, it was such a great moment. Maybe you can just speak about that, because I think this is just after we told you that you won the award, and we had all these photographers taking pictures of you in front of your work. Maybe you just want to speak about that. We'll talk about the residency a bit later, but I don't know if there's anything that you remember. I mean,
well, from that image, I just remember. Oh, I just remember so many people just like telling me what to do. You know, oh, do this and do that. You know, but I mean, it was a humbling moment for me, because the installation that I'd actually put up was, I think if you remember, 2013 South Africa had marked the centenary of the abolishment of the Native Land Act, and at the same time, while doing that work, I was grappling with my grandparents' depreciating health, and my grandmother had Alzheimer's at the time. So I was trying to sort of produce a work that could sort of cement her memory in time, because she was a subsistence farmer, and she farmed maize her whole life, and she passed away at 93. So for me, it was like it was special in that sense, and obviously I can see why people in the country resonated with the narrative as well, because of the connection to our political history. Yeah, so for me it was quite an emotional moment, because it was something that sort of validated my inclination to want to, you know, memorialize something that my grandmother had worked so hard for, and the work was actually from a harvest, the last harvest that she had worked on, and yeah, that's pretty much the background of it. And
okay, Kamo, do you want to maybe just give a little bit of insight into the first time that Black Ink Contemporary showed at Turbine Art Fair, and why you chose to apply to TAF, and what that meant for the collective?
Awesome. Before I forget, I'd like to go back to Mesh, seeing him for the first time. I actually never thought me and him would be that close. I thought he was full of himself. The first time I saw him, I'm like, this guy, you know, everybody's talking to him, surrounding him, asking him questions. People are not even coming to us, you know. So I had that hate Aysha bit about it.
Wow.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what time. I was like, this guy, we need to get to know this guy. I don't know how he's doing. But I'm glad we're friends now when we're that close. You know, it sounds like ages, you know. But yeah, with Black Ink, I come from a township in Guatemala, you know, where everything is hard. You know, you fight for everything, you know, and it's not even easy. If you're an artist in Guatemala and want to live or practice in Guatemala, it's not going to work, you know. So we all the time have to come up with ways, like innovative ways to do whatever we do and take it to Joburg or Cape Town, you know. But we had to work as a team, you know, and most of us were self-taught artists, you know, so we grew up with that team spirit, you know, that brotherhood type of spirit. And me and Thabo met at the Springside Gallery. That's where we used to host our events, you know, and we became good friends, you know, and we both had we had like a similar vision on promoting or giving platform to the young and upcoming artists from the township, especially the East End, you know. And yeah, we came together and we formed the movement. It was a movement in the beginning, you know, and we called it the Black Ink, you know, and from there it grew to become a well-known movement in the East End, but we wanted, you know, a bigger platform. And somebody told us about Turbine Art Fair, you know, because we were there on the second year, you know, not on the first year. And I remember us applying, crossing our fingers, praying every day, you know, that we get accepted, you know. And when they finally accepted it, we celebrated like there was no tomorrow. It was a big day for us and all these artists in the East End, because they knew now I'm going to be seen for the first time, which is what we were hoping for as well. And yeah, man, we came in, we brought everybody, you know. We were not even that critical on who's showing. We just wanted everyone to be part of it. You know, we brought good artwork, we brought bad artwork, you know, but we made it happen, you know. And I remember walking inside the Turbine Art Fair, the Turbine Wall for the first time. It was a watershed moment for us. You know, I almost cried. You know, I saw that and I was like, it's us who are going to be showing here for the first time amongst all these giants, you know, and it kind of changed the whole narrative, you know, even not for from us, but even for these young boys that we brought along with. Yeah, it was one of the most beautiful moments for me, even though I knew about the industry, you know, but bringing along all these young kids, you know, and these old artists, because we had artists that mentored us that never had an opportunity to show in a gallery, you know, and them, you know, being seen for the first time was one of the most beautiful things. Yeah, you know, there's so much I can talk about it, but yeah, it was one of the most beautiful moments for me, and it will go down in history as, yeah, it's one of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you know, there's a certain kind of confidence that showing at an art fair gives to an artist, but also to an exhibitor, to, you know, to say that, you know, what you're doing is important, and showing other people and providing a space where other younger artists and people in general can just see the importance and connect with what has been shown and the artists, and also connect their stories to each other. I remember a little bit from the first time that you guys showed. I mean, it's been a long time, but you were always just so full of energy, and every year since that, you've always just brought so much to the fair and so much energy, and just bringing young artists that I had never seen before, and that's always good to see and to acknowledge. And, you know, there always is some bad art, but then giving those artists that platform also just helps them grow in their own practice, which is always necessary, for people to be seen, but then to also see what else is out there. So maybe we can just reflect on what the immediate effects were from that first showing. Maybe start with Anna, just because we started with her first. What were the immediate effects? I think networking is kind of one of those immediate effects, and connecting to people.
Look, I think one of the major differences in my practice from that point is that I started to gain confidence in myself as an artist. You know, I went feeling quite cool about the idea of calling myself a reluctant artist, and it was something that I was supposed to earn. And I still don't think I'm ever going to get to that point where I feel I've truly actually cemented myself in that category. But that sort of, you know, awakening moment where you see your work alongside other work that you really appreciate, and other artists that you now are lucky enough, I can call them friends, you know, you sort of understand that you're part of a greater community. And I think that was really an important part of that Turbine experience. I think now when I look back at other fairs I've been a part of, and now other achievements I've had, that sort of initial camaraderie of being an emerging artist with other artists around you, and actually other emerging galleries around you, there was this like palpable energy that you could feel, that everyone sort of, I mean, coming to your point, like everyone was excited about being a part of this bigger picture and bigger thing. I think subsequently from there, I mean, I can never properly track it, but I started to get a lot more traction from other galleries who had seen me on the fair and had started to recognize my name in terms of some of the more recognizable aspects of my practice. And from that year onwards, I started working with 99 Loop, who have continued to be my gallery since. So, you know, I can't say that was, you know, the defining mark that changed things, but it certainly was a key area in my growth.
Okay, Mash, maybe you, I mean, the reasons he was definitely, you know, one of the immediate effects, and the prize that went with that. Maybe just speak about that residency and maybe how that's impacted your practice?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I think the immediate effect was because I think in hindsight, when I think about it, I had 0 artworks at that time in existence, you know. So so to be given an award, an artist award, amongst all those artists that I didn't even know existed, you know, because I also just come from a background where art was never really encouraged, you know. So to see everybody around me exhibiting felt like, you know, there were years ahead of me in terms of practice. So, and the immediate effect of that for me was like, you know, besides the residency, which I didn't even know what that was, you know, or what were the expectations from the institution by giving me an award, you know. It was more of a yearning of what I'd hoped that the award could do for me, you know, and a big part of that was I was hoping that they could show me how to have some practice so that I can at least have works also to exhibit. And you know, like Kamu said, you know, after I met all of these people and realized that people have studios as well and people have been practicing, you know, it encouraged me a little bit, and it also gave me a lot of confidence to, you know, to sort of build a practice. Also, you know, you go on this residency, and you know, and I mean, I was in Germany at the time, and also again in isolation, and you don't know people, and you don't know what the industry really entails. So you're just winging it a lot of the time, but yeah, it forces you to learn very quick. It forces you to work harder than what you thought you were busy doing, and from all those frustrations and fears, I guess I built up a really good, a very prolific practice, because right now it's like, I mean, I've established a good studio space. I've built a studio. I've shown all over the world. So yeah, it really does open you up to what you want to do. You know, because you can daydream about it forever, but you know, the moment you're catapulted into that sort of space, then you know, so many things can happen, and so many things have happened. Yeah.
Kamo?
Yeah, with me, so much, man, so much. Like, I remember when on our first TAF, I was also part of the exhibitors, right? Part of the artists. You know, I had about 3 artworks, and I sold 2 of them. And I remember I was still working from home back then, you know, and those 2 artworks actually are the reason I had a studio at August House, you know, and I went in there excited. I didn't even care if people bought my work. You know, I just wanted to show and be seen. You know, having to sell 2 of those art pieces, it changed so much for me, because it meant now I'm moving from home to Joburg, you know, for the first time. I'm getting my own studio, you know. So it changed so much in my life. And not just me, but even the other guys that were exhibiting, you know, having to send them a check, you know, of 10Ks, you know, the money that they made. There was so much excitement around us, and it kind of influenced so many of them to even push as hard as they could. You know, yeah, it was a really big platform for us, you know, because we didn't know much. You know, we've gone to galleries, we celebrated so many artists, you know, in South Africa, but we were not yet celebrated. And we didn't know how that felt like, you know, exhibiting something and actually selling it, you know. So us coming back home with so much money that we made from our first TAF, you know, meant we had to sit down and actually start taking things seriously, and push us as hard as possible, you know. And it was a beautiful fair, I must say. It was the most beautiful fair, You know, even though we came with nothing, I remember us, me and Thabo, we were like, you know what, we don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna do it until we figure it out, you know. And it actually worked, you know. We kept on pushing up until now, and now people look at us and they treat us like we know it all, you know, but that's where it all started. You know, it gave birth to what you guys see as Black Ink. Black Ink was created for this platform, you know. It was made by this platform, you know, and became what it is because of this platform. We met almost every art collector, you know, even the ones that we still have today, we met them through TAF, you know, and yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about, you know, but it was a beautiful, beautiful experience, yeah, coming for the first time.
So that leads a bit into my next question, actually. So maybe, Kamo, you can start with that, because I watched you all grow in the last 8 years in very different ways, which is really amazing to me, because I think it feels very much like a friendship every time I see each of you, it's really beautiful. And that's part of what TAF has given me, but also part of what, you know, my own practice and my own career has given me, and the community that we build within the arts, especially in Joburg, or in little spaces just on the outside. So my next question is really about, you know, how does showing at the fair, you know, influence your practice, and like what do you learn from showing at the fair, but also seeing how other people, how other artists in galleries exhibit at the fair, and how is that a learning process for you?
For us, we had to learn quick. I think one of our mission was we go to the fair, not just for us, but we go to a fair to learn as much as possible. So we'd go to every studio, to every booth, right? Study every booth, see what they're doing right, see what we think they're doing wrong, you know. And over the years, we grew based on that. That's why right now, you know, when we do things, we don't do them the way we used to do them. I remember we used to do, like everybody does it, you know, have your own tuck shop with about 20 artists in your booth, you know, and we're like, you know what, it's important for us to start telling a story, you know. And I remember me and Thabo agreeing that this is not about money, at least for now, you know, but let's tell our story, you know, let's show people where we come from, and let's do something totally different, you know. Let's do something totally different, which is hard at times, you know, because fair, it's only 3-4 days and it's done. You know, you can tell your story and people don't even connect with your story, you know. And over the years, I think we grew confidence-wise in believing in our own story and believing in our way of doing things. And we're grateful for the platform that fair gave us, because I feel you guys recognize that, you know, because sometimes we do it and we fail dismally, you know, but you guys will give us an opportunity to come back and show for the next year. So it was basically a space where we can explore and try new things and grow from that. You know, I feel we were not ready to show on the bigger stages in terms of like going to your New York art fairs, or whatever the big art fairs we know we have in the world. We had to start here and we had to grow from here. And once we graduate, you know, that's where we could start thinking of moving, you know, and expanding. But you guys allowed us to fail, and you allowed us to fail a lot, you know, without complaining, you know, and we were never kicked out. I know some of the people came and they showed for the first time and they were never allowed for the second time. You know, so we got that opportunity and we're grateful for that. And yeah, for us, it was all about seeing how other people do things and how we can improve on that. And I can safely say what we do now, I don't know, I don't have a word for it, but it's beyond what other galleries can do. You know, I don't even think other galleries are brave enough to do what we do now. You know, having to have only one artist sometimes, or selecting 2 artists and actually having a show for those guys and being confident to those guys, you know, and that's why, I mean, today we show, this year we're showing Kulu and Mashaba. You know, they were confident enough when I approached them to actually say, you know what, we can move with you guys. And I remember Mesh saying, you know what, you guys can actually do this even better. You know, we can come to you guys and you guys can take us anywhere in the world. You know, I don't know if Mesh still remembers that, you know, but that's the confidence we wanted to build. Yeah, we wanted to build that. We're not there yet. You know, I'm not saying we're there. We're still growing, you know, and we're still going to make mistakes. But I feel we kind of see the light, you know, we kind of see how things are done. We kind of see how things are done even internationally. You know, and yeah, I think I'm confident in that now. And thanks to the fair for everything we've learned throughout.
Yeah, it's definitely about creating that relationship with your artists, and then also your network of people that support that. You know, fairs tend to, or they should, in my opinion, they should form part of that, because it is about growing the economy and the industry and growing the platforms for artists, ultimately. So yeah, so I think there's always room to grow for all of us, and we're very grateful to have you a part of that and to watch that growth. Mash, maybe you can speak to that question, because you've shown at other fairs and international ones as well, and maybe there's, you know, there are things you learn at each fair that are different to what you would learn back home in South Africa.
I mean, you know, right off the bat, I when I reflect back on the international art fairs, I think it's important to say just how strong South African work stands out on any international platform, you know, and perhaps we take that for granted here back home, because we've got such a rich output of work, you know, such a, you know, diverse, you know, cultural backgrounds that informs all these works. So for me, which is why I stopped doing the international fairs a little bit, because you know, you're sort of pushed into that space because of people, you know, sayings of the likes of, you know, you're not celebrating, you know, in order for you to make it at home, then you need to, you need to establish yourself internationally first. But for me, every time I was that side, you know, there was a hunger to sort of establish myself at home, or at least in the South African space, because that's where, you know, the richest content for me came from. And even to this day, the South African, you know, fair landscape is still probably the richest I've seen, you know, in the world. And we need to invest a little bit more than perhaps what we are doing in our own fairs, because I think the world wants to see South African art, and the world wants to see, you know, because I had a lot of sold out shows on these international fairs, and, you know, so, and that just gave me an idea of, you know, we really need to establish ourselves internationally. And that's why when I was speaking to the likes of Kamo and Black in Contemporary, that was the most important thing for me, that, guys, this is the vehicle that we need to really establish in order for us to compete internationally, because nobody's doing what we are doing internationally. Yeah.
And how would you, I mean, how do you see we push that investment locally, in terms of fairs, but then also generally?
I don't know. I mean, for one, it needs to stop being like a 3-day weekend party, you know, like where we just all, you know, merge, you know, convene and then drink, and then, you know, it ends there. We need like a serious program that, you know, involves communities, that involves, you know, I mean, art fairs should run for a whole month. I think the program should definitely run for a whole month instead of just 3 days, you know, that end up, you know, because our communities that we come from still are not seeing the works, you know, you know, so in order for us to sort of open up that market a little bit, like, I think we need to take it to the people, you know, and we need to bring the people into the space with programs as well, you know, programs that really engage our societies, you know. because that's the only way that these really incredibly talented artists are going to, establish themselves in their own communities, instead of coming from all the way from Guatemala into the Joburg space. I mean, I've moved away from Johannesburg because that's just the way my practice has shifted. I just didn't want to be, while I appreciated for the establishment of my career to be amongst other artists and to be in a community of other artists and to work within that space. I think once you establish yourself, or if you really want to, find your voice, you have to move away from it. So the studio spaces become, like varsity. So you have to graduate from that space and move, and then go back into your own practice, and yeah, and people need to come to those spaces wherever we are in the world, because if we're having international shows and selling out international shows, we can't talk of our art industry as if it happens in these little silos and hubs, within the city, because these artists do not come from the city, and it only makes it problematic if we perpetuate the idea that in order for you to establish yourself as an artist, you need to come to the city. I mean, I was reading documents from 1972, and that's been a practice since then, and we are still perpetuating it today. Whereas the inspiration for me doesn't come from the city, which is perhaps why I can quickly disconnect from it. But yeah, I think that's the sort of investment where we shift away our industry from just these silos, because our country is completely rich with very talented artists.
Yeah.
I think then the thing you have to start understanding and thinking about, though, is how do you create fairs then that work outside of a commercial platform? Because I think one of the interesting things about Turbine, especially Turbine at the beginning, was that they sort of really spoke to their mandate of emerging art at affordable price points. So I think the type of people you saw that came to Turbine Art Fair were there with their wallets in hand, and they could afford artwork on the fair. Whereas now, I think if I think back at some of the current fairs running in the country, they are sort of based at an international price point for foreign buyers to buy work, which is fantastic. As an artist, I would like to make the most money I can make. But I think I circumvent a lot of the people that might connect with my work on a local level, because, I mean, I certainly couldn't afford work that I've seen and liked at fairs in a local context. And I think that both of you are totally right. There are fantastic artists and artworks that speak directly to specific areas in the country that have nothing to do with city areas. And, the more we start to embrace it and understand it, the richer we would be for it. I just, when I think back, perhaps not to my work as a visual artist, but more to my work inside arts management programs, it's very hard to understand how you can get a constant flow of buyers and viewers in different spaces. So if I think about, there's a fantastic art route in Limpopo that services about, I think, 5 wood carvers. And they are proper artists in their own right. They speak to cultural issues for Tsonga people. They speak to issues in their environment. I think their work would be best understood in Limpopo. Yet, I mean, they could easily be appreciated outside of the area. I just don't know, when I speak to them, at the moment, they have no tourists going in and out of Limpopo. But they've set their prices based on what they used to sell. And they used to sell to an American tourist. So now I think people that might be interested and might say, like, you know what, I've seen your work all the time and I really want it, I think they sort of alienate themselves. So it's a really tricky area to understand and to actually physically practice, because how do you have price, a price that fits what you can afford? At the same point, you as an artist have to make some money in this, and you have to pay for the stand, you have to be a part of the fair, but you also have to allow for a local market to start happening. And does the fair organizer step in at that point and start to subsidize some of those costs?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you, actually, because there has to be room for communities, and I think that sometimes that gets lost because the focus tends to be on the marketplace, and what the best marketplace is for the exhibitors, but then also for the artists, because those two are very much connected. And it is a challenge to take the fair outside of that immediate marketplace. In the case of TAF, it is Johannesburg, and usually we get people coming from outside of Joburg specifically for the fair, and that always helps. But there has to be also a lot of education that goes into the communities outside of the marketplace. And if we're taking something out to Limpopo, there has to also be education on what we're showing and engaging in that. And that, for me, that's how the market will grow outside of its immediate kind of areas, and establishing that education, and what that will be, and how that ultimately grows the market or grows the industry, because it is important for artists to come from rural areas or from very small towns, for the immediate community to also understand their work and to be able to support that, whether they directly agree on what they're saying or not, but they need to have that understanding and that education about the work that is being made. And for me, that goes across visual arts to dance and theater and those kind of things, but we have to create that education within those communities as well. And in many ways, that is a far larger project than a fair can take on. So it does create that challenge, but that has to come from the industry as a whole for it to really be effective, in my understanding. But yeah, I think that there is room for that. It's just finding a way to broaden that reach, and maybe online allows you at the moment, because that's all that we have, to reach as far as possible, but then also understanding that not everyone in South Africa has access to be online and to engage online, because it also has its own requirements, that being data and just access to it. So there's a lot of work, I think, that the industry as a whole has to do, but then also for me, the industry as a whole needs to be on board. There definitely are people or sectors that are committed to their market, and their market being, the big collectors and the international ones. So we have to also bridge that disconnect. I have one more question, and then we can open up to questions from the audience, and you can just pop your questions into the chat section over there. So then my last question was also just on whether you consider fairs in general as places of knowledge and sharing, or spaces of growth. And I think we've touched on that a little bit, but maybe you can just expand on that. Let's start with Anna.
Well, I mean, of course, right? They have to be places of knowledge and growth, because I think that's the sort of byproduct of being part of an art community, that when you get creative people that are convening in one spot, you get a community building that are already open to sharing their ideas and their content and their knowledge. And I think that's probably been one of the nicest things about a slightly smaller fair like TAF, is that you get this wide range of alumni that you can sort of pinpoint all throughout the sort of art landscape of South Africa. that it's really nice because you don't necessarily meet them in a sort of in a closed gallery context. You know, you meet them in these more open market spaces. And the people that I've met through TAF are people that then, you know, foster and circulate through other industries that I find very interesting. You know, there's three collectors I can think of that I met during that first iteration of TAF that have since bought work of mine almost every different solo and every different change that I've gone through in my own practice and growth. But then on top of that, you know, when I look at the three of your faces, I have memories of all of you that sort of go back to this moment of TAF. That's really very similar to what Mash was saying. You know, I don't necessarily think I had properly understood the, you know, the strength in a community system and joining an artist studio and being a part of a whole. And out of coming from an art school, I think I was a bit anti that idea because I didn't want to be, I like sort of working in a bubble, and I can be a lot more productive in that space. And I felt like, okay, if I went into an art studio, I would be more interested in going having coffee with Mash or Kama than actually going and practicing with work. But that sort of TAF first show reminded me that you can be fully engaged within a community without seeing them every day. And like, you know, I mentioned that I was next door to Bev's work. When Bev first did that show, she had completely different work to what she's doing now. She had these sort of portraits of white men that she had done in a figurative manner. And, you know, now to watch her grow into this completely abstract woven sort of language, it's very interesting to remember where she came from, where I was at the time. We afterwards shared a studio space and assemblage. She then moved on to the bag factory. You know, she sort of remained very knitted into this ecosystem. And I think that's what fairs give us. You know, they give us this meeting point where you can get to know other people, get to know other people's art. I mean, I suddenly realized when I was at TAF, I need to start making more work. You know, in order to be an artist, you can't have a body of work that's just like, you know, 10 great paintings that you think are incredible. You have to have some depth. You have to be able to do group shows and solo shows, and you need to get to understand yourself better. So, you know, I suppose I think that answers your question. I don't
It does in a way. Mash, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, of course, it's definitely a knowledgeable place for us to exist in as artists, because a lot of the time we don't see each other, you know, because we are so caught up in our own worlds. But definitely, you know, and you know, just because of the size of the fair as well, you know, it brings in a different crowd that feel that for them, I think it feels a little less daunting to engage in that sort of space. So so the learning process becomes a little bit easier, you know. So I mean, definitely for me, it's a big learning curve. Yeah.
Kamo?
Yeah, I think it's a place to learn. It's a place to grow. It's a place to copy. You know, it's a place to imitate. You know, but at the end of the day, you need to learn something. You know, it's impossible for you to be at the same. You know, yeah, I feel it's a space for us artists. It's like a festival for us artists. You know, it's a space for us to become rock stars. You know, it's a space for us artists to be seen. You know, and be touched. You know. So I remember one of the things that I learned And thanks to Candice Behrman, by the way, you know, because most of the time, in fact, all the time, you know, our booth will be next to her booth, you know, and I saw how hard she was working, that woman, you know, and every day I was like, how is she doing it? Because I had not been exposed to that. You know, someone who works that much, you know, I mean, she would help for herself, you know, she would sell for herself, you know, she would practically do everything herself, you know, and it's not an accident that she's a big success today, you know, and I learned that, and I was always looking forward to seeing her. You know, she doesn't know that. I've never told her, you know, I'm saying it for the first time, you know, but she was not the biggest inspiration in our growth, you know, Thabo knows that as well. And I realized she even won 2 awards for one of the most beautiful stores, you know, assembled at TAF, you know, and it's stuff like those that I'm always looking forward to. You know, it's stuff like that I miss the most, you know, us being virtual, you know, I kind of kill that, you know, because I always feed from such, you know, when I see someone doing good, it pushes me as well, you know, it reminds me as well that the goal is bigger, you know, and yeah, man, it's a space to grow. I don't think you can come to a fair and leave the same. So yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, Candice also in her has grown enormously with her gallery since the first time she's shown at the fair. And I don't think I've ever met anyone who has quite the same work ethic that she does in the drive. It's quite amazing to see. So I hope she's watching this, or she'll watch it later. Oh, it looks like we lost Mash. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, you know, it definitely is not the same being virtual and not having everyone around. I mean, I miss it as well. It's a very strange experience for me because I'm always running around in art fair. Like there are very few fairs that I get to go to and just walk around and leisurely stroll and look at the works. So it's kind of nice in a way to be able to have some time to just browse everything, but then it's also I really miss seeing everyone. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to share or ask in the chat? And then we can go through that. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes out from the fair and after the fair from all of our exhibitors. We actually have decided to extend the fair for another week. So if you haven't had a time to browse completely, there still is time, but there will also be additional programming that will happen after the fair. And that will be through our talks program, but also other exhibitions, online exhibitions that we're going to schedule with our exhibitors. So the fair program, I mean, the program for the fair will go on after this. So and in that, I hope there'll be more room for education around the programming that we have, and we'll definitely work towards that. Questions?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I wanna emphasize on the what Mesh and Anna spoke about, the community-based programs. You know, I think TAF need to think more about such, you know, expanding. You know, I don't know how, but I feel there's a way, you know, we can be involved in the communities and actually going deeper. You know, I feel fair has that community spirit. You know, when you go to other art fairs, you know that spaces are for rich people. You know, when you come to the Turbine Art Fair, you know, it has that community spirit, and it's more of a family kind of fair. You know, and I feel we could do more. We could go deeper in the communities, and we can make a big difference. You know, I feel there's so many diamonds in the rough out there. You know, and if we could go in and actually listen to their stories, you know, the Turbine Art Fair won't be the same. It could be something even bigger than what it is already. And I feel that's what brought us to the fair from the first place, you know, and it made us what we are. And I feel you guys can go even deeper, yeah.
Definitely. I mean, yes, it's something that I think about a lot, actually, because I come from a community that didn't really experience art. I still get all these weird questions from people about what am I doing. So it is something that I think about a lot, and it is something I want to find ways to incorporate into the fair platform. Because previously, you know, the fair has been one set weekend a year. So looking at ways of expanding that is something that I'm also constantly thinking about and trying to focus on.
I think also if there's a way to increase your footprint on your development programs, you know, because they have so much growth within, positive growth for artists. But, you know, as we spoke about now, they mainly focus on artists who can access a city point. But there are, you know, I think when we now look at this virtual setup where we are not emphasizing location being the major restrictor to certain programs, you know, there are ways that I feel as an industry we can work harder at finding people that are outside of the system, not necessarily just to sell work, but also to become part of the community, understand what it's like to be an artist. I think certainly when I think about all these little micro communities, there's very few access points to understand that being an artist is achievable. It is something that you can do in conjunction with other jobs, and that it's very enriching. You know, I think also it's a universal language, and it's so important that within a country that has such diverse citizens that we have something that, you know, universally connects us all. And I think although art is seen to be quite an elitist idea, it definitely isn't. You know, it's. I think that's the reason why I'm so attracted to it, that it's something that you can appreciate all the time. And I think it's almost like a blessing that in our country, if you drive down the street, you're likely to see someone with a canvas painting work on the side of the street and trying to sell it at the corner. That's incredible stuff, you know. And I think if you could work out a system to have a fair that also includes some of these different access points in different communities, you know, I think then certainly as an artist working on the other side, I feel like it could be a really enriching process for me also to see what other parts of the country look like and what other artworks look like in other parts. And I think it can be done. It's just whether, you know, you can find the right patron who can help us do it.
Yeah.
Definitely. If anyone who is watching knows the right patron, please.
Exactly right.
And I think you know, institutions also ask us, you know, like, because like we are also in these communities, and there are ways of in which we can help, you know. So instead of just looking at it from a monetary aspect, we definitely have the bodies out there. We need to create an ambassadorial system that these people, you know, become bridges. The people that, you know, the fair's already interacted with become bridges to those sort of spaces, you know, because we don't expect the fair to know that there is somebody in Limpopo who is a sculptor, you know, in rural Limpopo or wherever. Yeah. So, you know, so use us, guys, because I mean, we are just sitting and we wait, like I said, for every weekend for, you know, for once a year to have champagne with our friends.
We can do both, right?
And we can do both, definitely. We've got a lot of time on our hands, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I'm, you know, this has been really a great conversation. I think we've reached 12 o'clock, but I am definitely going to pick your brains about how we can do this, because it is something that I really want the fair to do and to go forward with. So I'll chat with you then. But just to go through the comments, Wandile had a comment that charity begins at home, and I'm not sure if he's still on, but yes, 100%. Also, Muzi said, "Hi everyone, great talk, and it is always good to hear the progressive thinking of artists who are trying to make a change in the industry, not only for themselves, but for the collective. And I think very much that definitely applies to all three of you. So it's thank you to you for doing the work that you do and continuing to be part of this community and to push it forward. Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been such an amazing talk. And I look forward to seeing what all of you have planned for this year, but then also MASH next year. I want to see those big projects.
So cool.
We're bringing his solo next year.
Yes, I'm ready for it, 100%. There's no way I can say no to that.
As long as he sends us invites, right? And we get the champagne also. I'm there.
Yes.
Of course.
Also, Aysha, a huge shout out to you. You're always, behind the scenes with all of these things. And you are certainly the driving force behind the development of the show and the fair in general.
Thank you.
Definitely credit to you. Definitely credit to you, Aysha, because you were so helpful during my year when I was just dazed and confused, So, and you've been so pivotal in just assisting, year in, year out. So thank you so much for your patience.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Yes, I agree. We go way back. We've done so much. We've done so much, and forever be grateful. And thank you for being patient with us, especially me.
After the champagne.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to Lauren and Ryan on the back end of this, who've just been making sure everything's been going fine. Thank you, everyone. We've got another talk that's happening in an hour, which is going to be quite cool. That's Finance for Hippies, if I'm not mistaken. So please also just register that. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.